newsroom. Starting with apparent progress in negotiations between the US and China aimed at de-escalating their ongoing trade war.
Delegations from Washington and Beijing, keeping it non-violent as they met in London for some 6 hours on Monday. Contentious, though, those talks are set to continue on Tuesday. They're seeking to nail down details on a temporary détente that was agreed to at the end of last month in Geneva. That summit saw tariffs that had hit more than 100% on each side, reduced to 30% on the U.S. side, 10% on the Chinese side. Key sticking points do remain, though, largely over export restrictions. The Trump administration appears willing to ease its curbs on chip design software, jet engine parts, and nuclear materials. It wants Beijing to loosen its recently imposed restrictions on rare earth minerals. Those metals are crucial for high-tech and defense manufacturing. China controls roughly 70% of the world's supply. Chinese exports overall to the U.S. cratered by around 34% last month. Donald Trump defending his strategy from the White House on Monday. Here he is.
I put on tariffs on China when I got in first term, and we took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and then I did it again, but I did it for a lot of others. If you look at the stats, the deficit last month was cut in half. Everybody was shocked. I wasn't shocked. I think a lot of the people at this table weren't, because they saw the billions of dollars that were pouring in, and the tariffs hadn't even started yet, just about.
Now, next, Canada is looking to boost defence spending as its relationship with the US deteriorates.
Prime Minister Mark Carney says his country will boost defense spending by 9.3 billion Canadian dollars. That's around $6.5 billion US this fiscal year, to achieve the NATO goal of 2% of annual GDP, 5 years ahead of schedule. The announcement coming as Canada is gearing up to host the next G7 summit in Alberta. As of last year, Canadian military spending was at just 1.4%. The 2% NATO goal, though, is a moving target. Russia's war in Ukraine and an increasingly assertive China have led the alliance to begin pushing for 3.5% of GDP as the new goal. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's repeated calls to turn Canada into the 51st U.S. state have severely soured relations between the North American neighbors. Carney says Canada has to reduce its dependence on the U.S. for security, especially as a warming Arctic becomes an increasingly strategic theater for potential confrontation. Ottawa has been spending 3/4 of its defense outlay on American equipment like the F-35 fighter jet. A turn to Europe now looking increasingly likely for that spending. Here's Carney.
In parallel, we are actively seeking to strengthen transatlantic security, particularly by becoming a participant in ReArm Europe. This will help diversify our military suppliers with reliable European partners and integrate the Canadian defense industry as full participants in 150 billion euros of Europe's rearmament program.
Mark Carney there. What about the markets then, Brian? How are they shaping up?
Well, Asian indexes initially gained across the board on hopes of a positive outcome from those U.S.-China trade talks in London. Chinese indexes, though, have since given up those gains as investor sentiment turns pessimistic. The yen weakening against the dollar on Tuesday, that is helping to drive Japanese exporter shares higher. The Nikkei in Tokyo up around 1/3%. Here in Europe, a relatively muted open as investors take a wait-and-see approach to Tuesday trade. Autos, oil and gas, the main gaining sectors, with financial services losing ground. London is up 1/3%. Paris and Frankfurt slightly in the red at the open.
And finally from Brian, Apple is the latest tech giant to hold its annual extravaganza to somewhat, mixed reactions this year.
A bit, you would say, Stuart. Apple held its annual Worldwide Developers Conference at its headquarters in Cupertino, California on Monday. The main focus this year, an upcoming design update for its user interfaces that the company is calling Liquid Glass. Its AI offerings, though, underwhelming analysts when compared with the features currently being rolled out by rivals like Google and OpenAI. Caroline Baum has more.
Apple leadership put on their best show Monday as the tech superpower kicked off its annual Worldwide Developers Conference.
Today, we'll unveil some exciting new innovations. And over the course of the week, we'll take a deeper dive with over 100 sessions, as well as labs led by Apple engineers, providing valuable technical and design guidance.
During the showcase, Apple announced a new design interface for their products called Liquid Glass. Design across devices will now feature sleek reactive features that adapt to content displayed on the screen. The graphics can be used in light, dark, or translucent mode. Apple also unveiled highly anticipated AI capabilities. Instant translation will now be available on messages and calls.
Écoute ma chérie, ajoute une pincée de vanille et de l'eau de fleur d'oranger à la pâte. C'est ça mon secret.
Oh, right!
Visual intelligence features will allow AI to interact with the camera and on-screen content. And app developers will be able to tap directly into Apple's large language model to create apps that work off the same AI, even while offline. After a slow start last year, Apple is hoping to catch up to its AI competitors.
This work needed more time to reach our high-quality bar, and we look forward to sharing more about it in the coming year.
Despite these advances, Apple still stands on shaky ground with investors. During the developer conference, Apple stock dropped about 1.3%, reflecting potential uncertainty about the company's ability to stand out in the AI field.